Hey guys, it's Jackson here from Titanic Games, and today we're going to be continuing on with our survival game series, and we'll be adding in a quote-unquote true first-person perspective. Now I say quote-unquote because there's multiple different ways that you can, I guess, set up a true first-person perspective, but this is just kind of one way to do it, and hopefully it'll start helping you get a feel for how you might set up alternate ways to do it. Okay, so just to give you a quick example of what it looks like, if I press play and I look down, right, we can see our legs down there, and we see we have a shadow, and when we run, right, we have our animations going, but we still have our first-person arms, okay? So let's go ahead and look at the character really quick too, and you'll see what this is kind of comprised of is it has a body mesh, it has some arms and the head mesh, and then, of course the gun is here as well, but also our, we have our own arms here. And that's kind of the main point here. We break it up into two parts so that we can hide one of them, right, while still being able to see our body, but it still works with the shadows. So that's kind of what we'll be doing. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to make sure we have is the animation starter pack. So if you recall from one of the first videos, we'd added it right away, but if you don't have it in your project, just go into the UE4 marketplace, search for animation starter pack, and you should find it, and then just add it to the project. Alright, it's completely free, so don't worry about that. So we're going to go into here, and what you'll see is there's a whole bunch of animations, but we won't be concerned with those yet. We're going to go into UE4 mannequin, mesh, and we want this SK mannequin here. So this is the skeletal mesh. So we'll take this guy and we'll right click, go to asset actions and export, and I'm going to export him to a new folder which I've called survival game, and I'm just going to export him as SK mannequin. So hit save. Since I already have it there, I'm just going to replace it, but you won't have it, so just save it. Alright, so we're exporting it so that we can go ahead and in a 3D modeling software such as 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, etc., we can make those edits to separate the body, or the mesh, into its body and legs, and then the arms and the head. Okay, so we're going to be going into Maya. That's my program of choice, but again, this will work for pretty much anything. And also, I'll make these files available for you in case you don't have one of these programs and don't want to follow along. Okay, so the link is in the description for that. But anyways, let's go ahead and continue. So we'll go to File, Import, and I'm going to go to my desktop, find where I saved it, and import it. Okay, so once it comes in, you're going to see that there's a skeleton, and there's a body and everything, or the mesh. And right away, let's go ahead and select the root bone and we'll hide it. So I'm going to create a layer from selected so that we can hide it, toggle its visibility. So now we only have our mesh, which is great. So as I mentioned before, we're going to separate this into two parts. It's arms and head, and then the other part will be the body and legs. So let's go ahead and work on the body and legs first. So really all we need to do is just right click, go to face mode, and just start deleting. It's as simple as that, really, nothing to it. All you really need to make sure that you do is that anything you delete here, you're going to want to make sure you don't delete that once you do the other version, or the other part. Okay, so we've reduced ours down to just the sockets. Okay, so I'll delete all this. And what's really nice actually is that the way this is made, it's made in multiple different parts, so you can actually pretty much just double click a lot of these, and it'll select only certain parts so that you don't have to worry about deleting too much at once. Okay, so we're going to get rid of everything here except for this little neck kind of area. So if we go to object mode, it should look something like this right now. Okay, so there we go. There's how your body should be looking. Alright, we'll toggle the visibility once more so we can see the skeleton. Now, one thing we got to do to make sure that we kind of clean up the mesh a little bit is go to Edit, Delete All by Type, and Non-Deformer History. Make sure you don't do History because that will break any of the skin bindings that the skeleton has. But we'll do Non-Deformer History. This will clean up any of the previous kind of vertice weights that the skeleton had on the old geometry that's now gone. Okay. And that's just more of a, it'll give you a warning if you try to export it without cleaning it up a little bit. So Anyways, we have this. So next let's go to Window, Outliner. And you can see there, here that we have this grouping called SK Mannequin. Now this is automatically created whenever you export a skeleton mesh from Unreal, right? It will create a group for both the mesh and the skeleton. But when you try to import this, right, with a grouping, Unreal doesn't like it, all right? And it will basically take this group and make it the new root bone, right? So any animations you use will kind of get screwed up. So we'll go ahead and hold Control and click to select both of these. We'll middle mouse button to drag them out of that grouping, and then we can delete the group. Okay, I'm going to go to Edit, delete all by type again, non-deformer history, just to make sure that there's nothing left over that could cause any issues. Right, then we're going to select both the root and the mannequin, go to File, Export Selection, and we're going to export it to our same folder so it's easy to find, and we'll call this sk_body. Okay. I guess make sure animation is checked, and everything else should be good. Okay, so there we go. Now all we need to do is create a new scene and do the arms now. Alright, so we'll wait for this to load up, go to File, Import the mannequin again. Now I'm going to go a little quicker on this one because we already know what to do. Alright, so select the root bone, oops, create a layer, hide it, go to faces, start deleting all the body. Okay. And then we're just going to want to make sure that we don't delete the parts that we previously deleted. Okay, so we want to make sure we still have these sockets on the arms. All right, that's important for these little ball parts. And then we can get rid of this little neck part down here. So it should look something like this. Okay, so this is what you should have now for your arms. Again, we're going to remove this from the grouping. Going to delete the group, go to Edit, delete all by type, non-deformer history. That'll clean up the mesh a little bit. All right. Now, one thing I want to point out is that since we aren't actually doing anything to mess up any UVs or anything, this will actually still be able to use the same materials that are already created for the mesh. So that'll be really nice. So again, we're going to select both of these from the outliner, go to File, say Export Selection, and we'll call this sk_, I guess, arms. All right. Okay, so there we go. Now we can go ahead and close out of Maya and go back into Unreal. Okay. And then in this same folder, we're going to right-click, create a new folder that we will call Parts. Okay. In this folder, we're going to import those two new ones. So we'll take our arms and our body and hit Open. Now for the settings here, first thing, let's go down to Material and just make sure that we don't import materials or textures. Okay. The reason for this is because since we're using the same geometry and we will be using the same skeleton, Unreal will automatically pick up on what materials are already being used. Okay, so since we already have that other mannequin in there, it will use the same materials. Okay, so we don't need to select that. So then for skeleton, we're going to choose the UE4 mannequin skeleton, since that's already in here and that skeleton is what all the animations are using. Okay, so we'll say import. We'll make sure the other one is using the same settings, and there we go. She should see that we have our two new skeletal meshes plus their respective physics assets. We'll save all that, and I'll just open up one of them so you can see really quick that it is indeed using the same material. Okay, so now we can go ahead and start setting up our character blueprint to accommodate for these new changes. So go into Blueprints, Core, and open up our survival character. Okay, and we're going to go to the viewport here because this is primarily where we're going to be working. Okay, so the mesh here is going to be our body essentially. All right, so this one will choose SK body. You'll see that it's really high in the air right now, but we're going to change that. Let's go ahead and change the cycle the transform to be world transform. I'm going to move this down to -90. Going to hit E to rotate, and again rotate that to -90. And then I'll hit W, and we'll scoot this guy back a little bit. All right, maybe -25 might be okay. So this should kind of be your transform, at least for now. We'll see how this turns out later on. Alright, so next we're going to add another skeletal mesh. So we'll add a component, skeletal mesh, and we'll call this arms. Okay. For this, we'll choose our SK arms. Alright, and you see it's way up in the air right now, but if we go ahead and parent this to, or excuse me, make it a child of the mesh, so we'll just drag it and drop it, we can reset everything, and it should automatically kind of pop in place, which is really nice. Okay. Now for the mesh, we need to specify an animation blueprint to use, because this will be important for kind of syncing up the animations. So we'll select the UE4 ASP Hero animation blueprint here. This comes with the animation starter pack, so it already has kind of an animation graph set up, but we'll be going over a bit more of an advanced one later on once we start adding in our own kind of animations and such. So anyways, we'll just select that for now, and you'll see that it changed its stance to be kind of this little idle pose right now. Alright. So next we're going to go into the construction script here, because we need to basically tell our arms that since it's the same, it's kind of the same skeletal mesh as, or it's using the same skeleton as this mesh, we need to tell it to kind of follow that mesh. Okay. So what we'll do is take the arms, drag out, and we're going to say set master pose component. Okay, so arms should be plugged into target, and then our mesh here, which is our body, will be plugged into the new master bone component. Okay. So now a quick explanation of what this node does. It essentially takes two skeletal meshes, or skinned meshes as it says here, and it declares one of them as the master component that everything else attached to it will follow. Okay, so we're telling our arms here to, even though we're not specifying an animation blueprint, we're telling it to follow the animation blueprint of our mesh. Okay, so if we go to viewport really quick, you can see that the arms aren't attached, but as soon as we hit compile, they'll snap into place, and they're now using the same animation blueprint as the body, which is great. That's kind of what we want. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out right now just to see where we're at. So if I press play, see here we are. We see we have a shadow, but looking down, right, we're clipping through our body. We can see our other arms, and that's really not desirable at all. Okay, so let's start fixing some of that. The first thing that we'll do is we'll select our arms here, and we're going to go in the details panel and scroll down to the rendering section. Okay, so this is probably what it's going to look like for you right now, but we're going to click the show advanced options so that we can see some of these other options here. Now the only one that we want to kind of set or be concerned about right now is the owner no see. All right, these two little variables here, owner no see and owner or only owner see, kind of influence how components are seen from the perspective of the character itself. Okay, so this character, right, if we set owner no see on the arms, the character will now not see the arms, but the arms will still be visible to anyone else. Okay, so we'll hit compile and save and press play, and now you should see that we can't see our arms anywhere, which is great, but our shadow is a little weird. It no longer has our head or our arms, so we'll fix that now. So for that, we need to go to lighting, click the show advanced options again, and we'll come down here to hidden shadow. So this tells the component to cast a shadow even if it's not visible. All right. So just toggling that, go to compile and save, hit play, and you can now see that our shadow is showing up and the arms and head aren't, which is kind of, we're getting closer to where we want to be. Okay. So next we need to kind of start moving our camera a little bit so that it's in position to not clip anymore. So for that, I'll take our camera here, move it out to, I don't know, here-ish. Really, this kind of more comes down to what you prefer. All right. There's not really any specific way that you're supposed to set this up. So we'll just try to find something that works nice for all of us and then go from there. So if we press play, we look down, it's not too bad. The only problem is when we start moving, right, you get that clipping more. All right, and that's not really what we want. So maybe I'll move it out just a little bit more, right there-ish. Maybe bring it up. I don't know if that will help at all. So if we press play now, We can look down. Still clipping a little bit. It's not as bad, right? When we move, it's still okay. For the most part, it's okay, I guess. We'll just go with that for now. This is okay. I can live with this. We're gonna make some changes now, though, that will essentially they'll limit how far down that the camera can look, so that we can kind of prevent these clipping issues without having to like make the camera stick way out or whatever, because that's not ideal. All right, so to do that, we're going to go back into the core of our blueprints here, and you should recall that we created this BP Survival Player Camera Manager way in the beginning. Now, if you're not familiar with how we created that, in our player controller, you can click this little plus button to create a new Camera Manager class, and then just make sure that it's selected for your player controller. And then along those lines, make sure that the player controller is selected in your game mode, which it is for us. Okay, so one other thing that we should do really quick, just to make sure that this works, because I encountered this issue earlier. If we go to Window and World Settings, all right, go into World Settings and just make sure that your game mode override is set to none. All right, we don't want any overrides going on here. Okay, so with that done, we can go ahead and open up our BP Survival Player Camera Manager and go into the Details panel here. And what we'll see is we have some options here for influencing how the camera can look around. Okay, so that's all these view variables. So the two that we're going to be concerned with are the view pitch min and the view pitch max. What this does is it tells the camera how far down or how far up that it can look. So just as kind of a preliminary, I guess, test, let's say maybe -80 instead of negative, essentially 90. And then same for the max, right? Because realistically, right, humans can't really look all the way up, and they can't necessarily look all the way down naturally, right? At least not without bending their whole body. So let's see. We'll try this out now. We press play. If we look down, okay, and we move, I'd say it looks pretty decent, right? It's still a little bit of weird clipping going on. We might need to move the camera a little bit more forward, but it's starting to look pretty decent. Okay. So, and just to kind of show you the full effects of this, if I set view pitch min to 0, hit compile and press play, all right, I'm trying to look down right now, but it's not letting me. Okay, so that's kind of how it influences it. I might want to try maybe -75, and then we can move our camera out a little bit more, maybe. I don't really want to. Well, I guess, first of all, the mesh here isn't exactly ideal, right? You'd probably want the body to be more facing forward instead of angled. But we can work on that later if we ever start adding in our own characters and such. Okay, so we'll try this now. All right, looking down, starting to, it looks all right. It does, I will say, it feels a little bit far out, but as far as preventing any clipping issues, it's definitely working in that regard. We'll see. You know what? This might be okay. This might be okay. All right, so actually I think I'm pretty happy with that. I'll show you my final settings here of where I'm at. So this is set to 5 and then 65 in the Z. The mesh here is set to -25. Here's the transform. And then our camera manager is set to -75 and 80. All right, so I think that's probably good for here. As far as like adding a weapon, we'll get to that later, because this first-person weapon here is only like a preliminary thing. We're going to be adding our own blueprints that will add the weapons themselves. So anyways, I think we'll call that good for now. I hope you guys found this video helpful. I haven't really seen a lot of videos or tutorials out there on specifically how to kind of play around with some of these rendering options that you have available. So I hope this introduced some new ideas that you guys can take forward and play around with and find what works for you. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you like it, like or subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.